Wales, a country taking tech to new heights. Our industry is booming. It shapes and innovates the world. It pushes beyond limits and defines progress. It produces a world-class workforce that competes on a global stage. Technology affects every aspect of our lives. We are faster, better, stronger. Wales is ready to stand up. We are a driving force, creating technology that will be used for generations. This is Wales Tech Week 2021.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Wednesday of Wales Tech Week. My name's Rhian Hayward, and I am from AberInnovation and Enterprise Campus in Mid Wales. And I'm really delighted to be able to kick off the day today. And it's Agri-Tech Day of Wales Tech Week, sponsored by ourselves at AberInnovation and Aberystwyth University. We've got an absolutely jam-packed schedule for today, and I'm pleased that you're able to join us today for on the premier stage for our main plenary. And I'm delighted to be able to welcome to the plenary Tessa Clarke, who is the co-founder and CEO of OLIO. And Tessa's joining us there. Good morning, Tessa.
Morning.
Hi. So I'm not going to waste any of this precious session by saying too much, because Tessa's going to tell us about OLIO and her journey, and also the company's journey to where they are today, which is a multi-award winning international organisation. And hopefully there'll be time at the end of Tessa's session for me to direct some of your questions to her. So I would encourage you to put any questions you have in the chat function on the screen, and we'll be able to pick Tessa's brains perhaps and learn some lessons for us to take away today. But I'm going to hand over to Tessa, and thank you very much, Tessa. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be with you all. So yes, I'm Tessa, co-founder and CEO of OLIO, the world's first neighbour-to-neighbour food sharing app. And today I'm going to talk you through our journey from a proof of concept via WhatsApp to now a global movement with 4 million members. But the OLIO story starts here. This is my parents' farm in North Yorkshire, so up in the northeast of the UK. And when you grow up on a farm, you learn from a very young age just how much hard work goes into producing the food that we all eat every day, because my parents had no qualms whatsoever with the concept of child labour. So as soon as myself, my two younger brothers could walk and carry buckets, we were immediately put to use on the family farm. And we had either a well-spent or misspent youth, depending upon how you look at it, working incredibly hard. And as a result of this upbringing, I have a really strong appreciation for the value of food, and I equally have a pathological hatred for food waste. Now, I didn't think anything in particular about that. I went off to pursue what could be described as a fairly classic corporate career. But everything changed through a seemingly inconsequential moment in my life 6 years ago now. I was living and working in Switzerland and moving back to the UK. And on moving day, the removal men said to me that I had to throw away all of our uneaten food. Now, clearly, given my farming upbringing, there was no way I was going to put this perfectly good food in the bin. So much to the irritation of the removal men, I stopped packing and instead bundled up my newborn baby and toddler and set out into the streets, clutching this food, hoping to find someone to give it away to. And to cut a very long story very short, I failed miserably. I wasn't to be defeated though, and so I went back to my apartment, and when the removal men weren't looking, I smuggled the non-perishable food into the bottom of my packing boxes. And I can remember that moment so vividly, thinking, I am probably performing a criminal offence right now. But to me, it felt even more criminal to put perfectly good food in the bin when I knew there was someone probably within 100 meters of me who would like this food. The problem was they just didn't know about it. So the first thing that my co-founder Sasha and I did was to research the problem of food waste. And what we discovered truly stunned and horrified us. So globally, a third of all the food we produce each year gets thrown away, which is worth over $1 trillion US. Alongside that widespread waste, we have widespread hunger. 800 million people go to bed hungry every single night, who incidentally could be fed on just 1/4 of the food that we waste in the Western world. But looking at that previous image, it's really easy to assume that hunger is something that takes place somewhere else, perhaps on another continent. But the sad reality is that hunger is endemic, even here in the UK. Prior to COVID, we had 8.4 million people living in food poverty. And to put that in some context, that is equivalent to the population of London. So we have widespread waste, we have widespread hunger. And then the real kicker is just how environmentally devastating food waste is. So if it were to be a country, food waste would be the third largest source of greenhouse gas emissions after the USA and China. Now, the reason for that is because a landmass larger than China is used every single year to grow food that is never eaten. That is land that has been deforested, indigenous populations displaced, species driven to extinction, soil degraded. 1/4 of humanity's fresh water use is used to grow food that is never eaten. And then that food goes on an enormously long supply chain, very resource and carbon intensive supply chain. And when a third of that food gets thrown away, the lion's share of it ending up in landfill, unfortunately, when food waste decomposes without access to oxygen, it creates methane. And methane is approximately 25 times more deadly than CO2. And so that is why, if it were to be a country, food waste would be the third largest source of greenhouse gas emissions after the USA and China. And I'm aware that it's pretty grim, this presentation right now. I promise it will get more cheerful, but not quite yet. So that's where we are today. As we look to the future, we have another 2.2 billion people joining the planet, taking our population to just short of 10 billion people. And according to the FAO, in order to feed us all, we need to increase global food production by 50%. And today we have absolutely no idea how we are going to achieve that. And I'm aware I've shared lots of pretty crazy and depressing statistics with you, but I've saved perhaps one of the craziest till the end, which is the fact that in a country such as the UK, half of all food waste takes place in the home. And so that means that, we, each and every one of us on this call right now, we are responsible for half of that enormous problem I've just shared with us. Why is that? That's because we have 28 million households in the UK, all throwing away approximately 20% of their weekly shop. So a typical British household throws away over £700 sterling of perfectly good food each year that could have been eaten, collectively adding up to £14 billion worth of food ending up being thrown away every single year from our homes. So what this means is that we are half this problem, but if we flip it on its head, if we can harness the power of technology and community, then that means, by the same logic, that surely we can be half the solution. And that's exactly what OLIO aims to be. We are an app that connects people with their neighbours so you can give away rather than throw away your spare food. So how it works is really simple. You snap a photo, add your items to the app. Neighbours living nearby get an alert. They can browse the listings, request what they want, and pop round and pick it up. And one of the most powerful things about OLIO is just how strong the demand for this food is. So half of all the food added to the app is requested in less than 21 minutes. So our number one challenge is really encouraging absolutely everybody to get involved, to take a few seconds to give away their spare. The other thing that's really amazing about OLIO is the fact that whilst we look like an app, and we are an app, our beating heart is our community. It's the fact that we're harnessing technology to connect people in real life on the doorstep. Because whilst we are more connected than we have ever been before, we're actually simultaneously lonelier than we've ever been before. So there are 9 million people in the UK who say that they are always or often lonely. And OLIO is directly countering that. We've recently done a survey with our user base, and over 40% of our users say that they feel less lonely since joining OLIO. We're incredibly proud of the impact that we've had so far. We're directly tackling 4 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which you can see top left there. And to date, our community of just over 4 million people has shared 22 million portions of food, which had an environmental impact equivalent to taking 66 million car miles off the road. And we have also saved 3.3 billion litres of water. But what's most exciting is that we are currently doing 0.01% of our full potential. We couldn't have achieved any of this were it not thanks to our 50,000 and counting ambassadors. These are people who are passionate about OLIO, passionate about our mission. They want to be able to use OLIO in their local communities. And so they are spreading the word about OLIO on our behalf using, either kind of online or using posters and letters and flyers that we provide. And as a result of our ambassadors, we have had food now successfully shared in 59 countries around the world. An equally important type of volunteer for OLIO are our food waste heroes. So we have 27,000 trained volunteers who we've recruited from our community, and we then train them online on our food safety management system and match them up with their local business, which might be a supermarket, a cafe, a bakery, a deli, a corporate canteen. And those volunteers on their allotted day and time will pop out of their home across the road. They will pick up all of the unsold or unserved food from that location. They will take it back to their home. They will add it to the app. Within minutes, their neighbors are requesting it, and minutes later, they're popping around and picking it up. And that takes that food on average from being considered a waste stream at the business location to instead fully redistributed into multiple homes in the local communities. And on average, that takes just 2 hours for that to take place. And so our vision for OLIO is an unashamedly bold one. Within the next 10 years, we want 1 billion OLIOers. So by 2030, we want 1 billion OLIOers, all connected so the world's most precious resources can be given away, not thrown away. And a really, really important reason for the size of our ambition is the fact that Project Drawdown, which is a collaborative piece of work by several hundred of the world's leading climate change scientists, issued their latest research last year. And they said, enough of the doom and gloom about the climate crisis. Let's stack rank the top 100 solutions to the climate crisis. And in position number 1 for a 2-degree warmed world is reducing food waste. And it comes above electric cars, above solar power, and above a plant-based diet. The number 1 most important thing humanity can do to try and solve and mitigate the worst effects of the climate crisis is stop wasting food. And that is why we have set ourselves such an enormous target. But it's not just food waste that is a massive environmental problem for humanity. Our food system collectively is the largest single industry in terms of contributing towards greenhouse gas emissions, also biodiversity losses, water use. On every level, we are going to need to transform our food system if we are to avert the worst effects of our climate and biodiversity crises. And that is why I'm super excited to be opening up the session today, because I firmly believe that we are on the cusp of a new dawn of a new agricultural revolution. And you can see in some of these headlines that I've selected here, which indicate just how much activity is going on in this space, from precision agriculture to cultured meat, AI, indoor farming, regenerative agriculture. This is such an exciting time to be involved in our agriculture and food systems. And as each of you listening in today is working hard to sort of play your part in solving this enormous problem, it can be very, very easy to feel overwhelmed at the enormity of the task that faces us. And I would encourage you to take inspiration from the words of Dr. Jane Goodall, because we certainly do at the OLIO team. And she said, I like to envision the whole world as a jigsaw puzzle. If you look at the whole picture, it is overwhelming and terrifying. But if you work on your little part of the jigsaw and know that people all over the world are working on their little bits, then that's what will give you hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tessa. That was a tremendous way to kick off the day. Just to hear about some of the global imperatives at the beginning of your talk there about why food sharing is such an important component of reducing food waste is sort of grounding for us today. But the community that you've mobilized, so the users of your app, but also your ambassadors, your food waste heroes, it feels like a movement that you've mobilized, and that is an incredibly important thing to highlight alongside the technology that you've developed. So Thank you very much indeed for that. Wonderful that you ended there and giving us that shot of the other sort of technologies that are barreling towards us, because the whole day today is packed full of conversation about many of those technologies. So thank you very much for that. I've got a lot of questions in the time that we've got. So we've got about 14 minutes. So we've got time. For those listening, please do pop some questions in the chat if you'd like to ask them of Tessa. But from my point of view then, so I know that a lot of people listening will be perhaps at the start of their journey as entrepreneurs with early stage businesses who are looking to develop technology of one sort or the other. What's been the biggest challenge for OLIO in terms of deploying your particular technology solution?
So many challenges, but I'll just quickly start with a tiny bit of advice actually for those entrepreneurs that you just mentioned that are at the start of their journey, because that has helped, this advice has helped us on our journey. So at the very, very early days, especially with technology, it's very, very easy to have a desire to sort of perfect what you're building before putting it in the hands of your end users. And I really encourage any tech entrepreneur, just kind of mandatory reading, to read Eric Ries's book, The Lean Startup. So that is the whole sort of philosophy of test, measure, learn, kind of getting that very first MVP, minimal viable product, into the hands of your end users even when you feel kind of deeply uncomfortable about it, because that will save you so much time and so much money, because you will then get real live feedback from your users. And a great example of that we did was before we even kind of spent a penny building the app, we needed to test the hypothesis that strangers would share food with one another. And we didn't want to spend a fortune building an app that in all likelihood no one would use. And so we tested that hypothesis using a WhatsApp group. And that cost us nothing. But the beauty of it was that those users said to us, whatever you build only needs to be slightly better than this WhatsApp group. And that was absolutely critical insight and learning for us, because prior to that point, we'd thought, well, we have to have user ratings and user reviews and all these sort of bells and whistles. And we realized, no, we don't. We've just got to focus on our early adopters. Our early adopters are super forgiving. So just launch kind of earlier than you feel comfortable, get it in the hands of the early adopters. They will then give you feedback, and then you get on that kind of wonderful iterative cycle of development. I think, we've had so many challenges along the way. Perhaps our biggest challenges, though, ironically, have not been technical challenges, not at all. And I think for much of technology, the biggest challenge is behavior change and driving that behavior change. So for us, it's been really challenging, encouraging people to kind of take that leap of faith and to add something to the app for the first time. We've had to we've done a lot around sort of behavioral psychology and really kind of working on that product experience. And then we've had to do a lot of work really helping to educate people about how important food is, how valuable food is, how big a problem food waste is. A lot of people think, well, food, it's natural, what's the big deal about food waste? And we've had to just do an awful lot of education. So I would encourage any sort of tech entrepreneur from day one to be thinking about the behavior change that they're trying to drive and what's their plan for that in parallel to developing the technology.
Oh, thank you. That's great. Thank you, Tessa. We've had a question which sort of follows on from that in the chat, actually, which is from Elizabeth Arnold. And she's asking, how difficult was it to get the community engaged online? And I suppose for me, you've started talking about that already. What was the tipping point, perhaps, for that?
Well, do you know what? We sort of never feel like we've hit the tipping point. We always feel like it's something that's going to happen, next week with the next marketing campaign or the next feature release. That's also just part of the entrepreneurial life, I think. But in terms of the community, this really builds on the point that I was making before about being just laser focused on your early adopters. So your early adopters are very unusual people. They are totally unlike everybody else that you are going to eventually bring your product to. And your early adopters are just wide-eyed, crazy passionate about what you're doing. They're extremely forgiving, and actually they really enjoy co-creating with you. So what you've got to do in the early days, I can remember when I first started talking to people about OLIO, I filtered people into groups of 3. So there were people who were just wide-eyed excited, who just got it in an instant. They were like, where can I get it from now? Then there was a group of people who intellectually understood what we were trying to do, kind of got it, but I could tell they weren't going to rush off and do anything. And then there was the laggards, and they were people who, no matter how long I talked to them about what we were doing and why it was important, they just didn't get it. And it was really important emotionally and mentally just to compartmentalize those people. Just don't even spend any time trying to deal with or address their issues, and just stay really focused on that first group of people who will co-create the product with you. And those people sought us out and found us very, very quickly. Now, there aren't that many of them in any community. They're probably kind of 5% of all people. So you've got to kind of look hard to find them, and also make yourself open for them to find you. So throughout our messaging and our communications, we're constantly asking people who are passionate about our mission to get in touch with us. And people will often say, well, how did you get 50,000 people to do X, Y, and Z? My sort of slightly facetious answer is, well, we asked them to. Right. So like, if you don't ask, you don't get. So I think that's really worth bearing in mind.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tessa. In terms of the next step, so you mentioned a lot of technologies at the end there, but for OLIO, in terms of your tech advancement, is there a direction of travel that you could share with us in terms of what is the next step technologically for you guys?
Well, we sort of think of tech and product as sort of completely intertwined. So we don't sort of pursue tech for tech's sake. We're really focused on the product, the functionality. What does our community want to be able to do? What do we want to be able to do as a business? And then the tech has to kind of deliver on that. The next thing that we're super excited about for OLIO, which we'll be launching later on this summer, is a new feature called Borrow, which connects people with their neighbours to be able to lend and borrow everyday household items. So think your cat carrier, your camping stove, your fancy dress costume, books, board games, drills, ladders, etc. So OLIO is all about reducing waste, helping people to live more sustainably, and connecting with their local community. And so Borrow is the next very natural extension of that.
Brilliant. Thank you. Keep us posted on it. Let us know when that goes live. Please do. So thinking about OLIO as a company and how you've grown over time, something that I know a lot of people would be interested in is your perspective on the team that you've developed. Oh, yeah. Lights are going down at this end. And specifically, we often talk with people who are building businesses about skills. And from a sort of the perspective of universities and the school, our educators and the government, are we equipping people with the skills that they need to work in businesses like OLIO? Have you got any thoughts on that? Are there any gaps for you guys?
I do. I have lots of thoughts on this whole sort of area of sort of people and recruitment. So in no particular order, I think the first thing that we look for when we're recruiting is not skills. It is mission obsession. So not just mission alignment, but mission obsession. It's a very, very high bar that people have to pass, but we have found that has resulted in outstanding performance and an outstanding company culture, because everyone is just pulling, pushing in that same direction. It can be very tempting, by the way, when you're scaling, for hard to recruit for roles. So let's take, a React Native developer, for example. Everybody wants React Native developers right now, or a female React Native developer, sort of even rarer. It can be tempting to sort of lower that bar of mission obsession, and we've just been really clear not to do that. So it might take longer to recruit, but we actually think we kind of go slower to go faster. So there's that piece, mission obsession. The other thing, we're a remote first business. We've never had an office. We're, founded by two mums, neither of whom had the time, and we certainly didn't have the budget to be sort of commuting to an expensive office that neither of us wanted to be in. As a result of that, we have found that recruiting actually hasn't been that difficult for us, because we are not competing with everybody else trying to get the same, female React Native developer in London. We've opened ourselves up to the whole of the UK, and as a result of that, we have untapped just this incredible talent pool of people who don't want to live in London, and people who are just from different backgrounds, neurodiverse team members. Our sort of male-female balance is much better, and so that's brilliant. But in order to recruit for people who can sort of not only survive but thrive in that remote first environment, we are looking for this mindset, this aptitude, that kind of growth mindset type person, self-starters, full of initiative, and not people who enjoy micromanagement and stuff like that. So you'll notice that I haven't talked about skills kind of at all yet, because skills then for us sort of is that next level down, because we believe that if we've got people who are mission obsessed and who've got that growth mindset, then it is amazing how quickly, if they don't have exactly the skills we want, they can learn. So yeah, that's my sort of long-winded answer to that question.
No, fantastic. Because if there are people listening now who are looking for the first step in their career or the next step in their career, that's a very clear message. As to how they do that.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of add to that, I've had a very strong university background myself and did Stanford MBAs and this, that, and the other, but we don't wait at all. Like, we really are not looking for people who, must have gone to university, must have got X, Y, and Z. Absolutely not. I literally don't even know and don't care who in my team has been where. It's much more about kind of how they're showing up kind of on the playing field every single day.
Yeah. No, fantastic. I did do a little bit of looking at your OLIO website and at the team, and what's wonderful is you've got the little country flags against certain people, and I did notice the Welsh flag there.
Yes, we've got a really strong. So I should do a massive shout out to Lloyd, who leads our tech team. He lives in a very, very remote place, sort of in the middle of Wales, and we've got a couple of other team members who are also making, sort of, I guess, benefiting from living in such an amazing place, such as Wales, and also being able to work on such an exciting company such as OLIO. It's like a win-win for all of us.
And us indeed. You can come again, Tessa. You can come Thank you. So we've got 3 minutes left, and so I've got a couple questions to kind of round us off, which are sort of the biggest picture kind of things, I guess, that I know that some of our people listening will be interested in. So, I mean, for us in Wales, we've got the Wellbeing of Future Generations legislation. So there is a culture change afoot here in Wales about how companies can operate to be sustainable and to hit a lot of the goals that legislation calls for. But how can government do more? I suppose if we had to ask more of government, not just Welsh government, any government, what would be your request?
So I'll give you a rapid fire 4, starting kind of super macro and then going a bit more detailed. So the number one thing would be to please move away from GDP growth as the kind of the single metric that everyone obsesses about and defines success by. It is fundamentally flawed and just is not fit for purpose in the 21st century, when we're realizing that we live in a resource constrained world. Endless growth, GDP growth, makes zero sense whatsoever. So come up with a much better sort of basket of metrics. The second thing that I would request would be to make reporting of waste mandatory for medium and large size businesses. So there is a consultation going through to make food waste reporting specifically mandatory. There's an expression which is that sunlight is the best form of disinfectant. That would transform businesses' attitudes overnight if they suddenly had to show their dirty laundry, quite frankly, and it would open up their willingness to work with companies such as OLIO that are looking to solve the waste problem for them. So that's my second ask. The third ask would be, we have really benefited from R&D tax credits for the sort of pioneering tech R&D work that we are doing, and we would like to see a similar sort of scheme, but applied to green tech specifically, to really add that extra degree of incentive and incubation for green tech businesses for whom kind of we're still trying to figure out our business models. right now. So more than ever, we need whatever incubation support we can get in the early days. And the final thing is I would love to see a carbon market that I could access. So OLIO, we've just measured our carbon footprint. We've known for a long time how much carbon we're saving every month. Our emissions as a business offset just 3% of the carbon that we're saving. So a way of looking at it is that we're 97% carbon negative. We are doing an enormous benefit to the world. I should be able to sell that sort of carbon credit to someone who wants to buy it. So they would be my asks.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. I think that's a wonderful way to end this session. And I want to thank you on behalf of everybody who's listening in Wales Tech Week today, Tessa, for your presentation. It's really inspirational. And
great,
we're very
lovely being with you.
No, thank you very much. So what I've heard is minimal viable product, early adopters, co-creation, and I've written lots of other things down as well. But these messages we will absolutely take away, and look forward to the rest of the day, which is packed. Hopefully you'll be able to tune in a bit later for some sessions if you can. But
great stuff. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Rewatch all of our sessions online. Thank you to our partners.